Beyond the Line, a story of forbidden attraction and emotional truth. Life has a way of shifting quietly beneath the surface, unnoticed until the changes have already taken root. It wasn't until recently that I realized just how much I had changed over the years. I had spent my life in roles that others expected of me: wife, friend, confidant, caregiver. My relationship with Andrew, my husband, was built on understanding, trust, and love. It was steady, predictable, and in many ways, it was what I had always wanted. But life has a funny way of reminding you that even the most peaceful existence can hold surprises. I never expected my friendship with Mark, Andrew's longtime friend, to take such an unexpected turn. Mark was someone I had known for years. He had been a part of our lives since before Andrew and I even met. He was kind, thoughtful, and always there when we needed him. To me, he had always been a fixture in our life, someone who fit into our world as seamlessly as any of us. As time went on, I began to notice things I had never noticed before. Mark's presence began to feel different, as if the dynamic between us had shifted in ways I couldn't understand. It was subtle at first, a lingering glance, a tone in his voice when he spoke to me, moments where our conversations felt more charged than they should have. But I pushed those thoughts aside, thinking it was just a figment of my imagination, a trick my mind was playing on me. Then, one evening, it happened. We were all at the house, having dinner together. It was a typical evening: light conversation, laughter, and the easy familiarity that came from years of friendship. But something in the air was different. Mark and I had a moment, just a brief exchange of glances, but in that moment, I felt something shift, something that made my heart race in a way I had never felt before. I could feel the electricity between us, a pull that I couldn't explain. Mark was still the same person he had always been, but I suddenly saw him in a way I hadn't before. He wasn't just Andrew's friend. He wasn't just a guest in our home. He was someone who had become a presence in my life that felt far more complex than I had ever realized. He was no longer just Mark, the man who helped us with the car when it broke down, who showed up to watch the football games with us. No, now he was something else entirely, and I didn't know how to process it. The next few days were filled with an unease that I couldn't shake. I avoided Mark as much as I could, trying to distance myself from the feelings that had begun to bubble up. But every time I saw him, I felt that same pull. It was like an invisible thread between us that I couldn't untangle, no matter how hard I tried. He was still the same, yet different. And so was I. I had to confront the truth. I couldn't ignore what was happening. The more I tried to push these feelings aside, the more they intensified. I felt guilty, confused, and lost. Mark was Andrew's best friend. He had always been like a brother to him. And here I was, feeling something that felt both exciting and dangerous. It wasn't something I could explain, but it was real, and it was there, every time I looked at him, every time he looked at me. It wasn't just physical attraction, though that was certainly part of it. It was something deeper, something emotional. I felt seen by him in a way that I hadn't realized I needed. There were moments when our conversations felt like they were opening something inside me, something that had been closed off for years. There was a warmth in his presence, a familiarity that was both comforting and unsettling at the same time. But I couldn't entertain it. I couldn't. I was married to Andrew. I had made a commitment to him, to our life together. And yet, in the quiet moments when I found myself alone with Mark, I couldn't help but wonder what this feeling meant. Was it just a passing infatuation? Was it just a momentary lapse in judgment? Or was it something deeper, something that would require me to confront the choices I had made and the life I had built? I didn't have the answers, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find them. But one thing was clear: something had shifted. My relationship with Mark was no longer the same. And neither was I. The days after our conversation felt unusually still. It wasn't awkward, per se, but there was an undeniable weight between us. Everything had subtly shifted the night we confessed the emotions we had both been avoiding. The friendship that I had shared with Mark for so many years had been unchallenged and uncomplicated, until now. It felt like the air around us was charged with an electricity neither of us could ignore, And each moment spent together since that night had been laden with an unspoken question: what now? Mark had always been a steady presence in my life, a dependable friend to both Andrew and me. He had been there through all the highs and lows of our relationship, offering advice, sharing laughs, and supporting us through hard times. I had always thought of him as just that, a friend. There was nothing more to it, nothing to complicate the simplicity of our bond. And yet, as the days wore on, I found myself becoming more and more aware of him in a way I had never been before. The first signs of this shift were subtle. I noticed the way my heart would beat a little faster when Mark entered a room, how my thoughts would wander to him at the most unexpected times. It wasn't anything overt, just fleeting moments when I'd catch myself thinking about the warmth of his smile, the depth in his eyes when he spoke to me. I dismissed it at first, chalking it up to the emotional roller coaster of the past few days, but deep down, I knew something had changed. Mark, too, seemed different. He wasn't quite as easygoing as he used to be. The comfortable banter we once shared now carried an edge, a quiet undercurrent of something that neither of us could quite put into words. I could see it in his eyes, the way he would look at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. There was a softness there, something I had never noticed before, but it was unmistakable. It was the kind of look that made my pulse quicken, that made me feel like there was something more between us, something that had always been there, buried beneath the surface, but that we had never acknowledged. We both avoided talking about it, of course. We had to. This wasn't just about some fleeting attraction, it was about something much deeper. Mark wasn't just my husband's best friend, he was a person who had become important in his own right. And yet, I couldn't escape the pull I felt when I was around him. The moments we shared, whether alone or in the presence of others, felt charged in a way I couldn't ignore. The guilt started to set in after a few days. I knew it was wrong. Mark was Andrew's closest friend, and I had spent years cultivating a relationship of trust and respect with both of them. But the feelings I had for him, these feelings that had crept up on me unexpectedly, were real, and they made my stomach twist with both excitement and fear. One evening, after dinner, the silence between Mark and me became almost unbearable. Andrew had been out of town on a business trip, and it was just the two of us. Mark sat on the couch across from me, flipping through a magazine, though his mind seemed far away. I could feel his gaze on me, and when our eyes met, there was a quiet intensity in his stare that made my heart race. I quickly looked away, feeling my cheeks flush. We couldn't keep pretending that nothing had changed, that the emotions we had both been feeling weren't growing stronger by the day. "Claire," Mark said suddenly, his voice low but clear, "we need to talk." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't want to have this conversation, not because I was afraid, but because I knew it would change everything. I didn't want to face the truth of what had been happening, but I knew we couldn't avoid it any longer. We had both been tiptoeing around something we had both felt for too long. I nodded slowly, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "What do we need to talk about, Mark?" He looked at me for a long moment, his expression softening. "I've been thinking about what's happening between us. I don't know what it means yet, but I can't keep pretending that nothing's changed. I feel it, Claire. I feel it every time we're together. And I think you do, too." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. He was right. I couldn't deny it anymore. The connection between us had shifted, and it wasn't something I could simply explain away. "I've been thinking about it, too," I said quietly. I didn't want to. I didn't want to face it. But I can't ignore it anymore. It's real, Mark. And I don't know what to do with it. There was a long pause as we both sat there, the weight of our confession hanging in the air between us. The room seemed smaller now, as if the walls had closed in around us, and there was nowhere to hide. We couldn't pretend that nothing had happened, we couldn't pretend that the feelings we had for each other weren't real. Mark leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes searching mine. "I don't know what this is, Claire. But I can't keep pretending that I'm not affected by it. I've been trying to distance myself, trying to push it away, but I can't. And I can see it in you, too. I can see the way you look at me. I felt a lump form in my throat, my emotions swirling in a mix of confusion and desire. "This is wrong, Mark," I whispered, barely able to speak the words. We can't let this happen. It's not just about us. It's about Andrew. It's about everything we've built together." Mark's face softened, his eyes filled with understanding, but also with a deep sadness. "I know," he said softly. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to ruin anything. But I can't pretend this doesn't exist anymore. We have to face it. We can't keep living in denial." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts. What were we doing? What was happening to us? And why did it feel like we were both caught in a current that was pulling us forward, despite the consequences? "I don't know what happens next," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But I do know that we can't keep going like this. We have to figure out what this means, for both of us, and for Andrew." Mark nodded slowly, his expression still filled with that same quiet intensity. "I agree. But no matter what happens, I need you to know that I care about you. I always have. And I can't just walk away from this. Not now. Not after everything we've said." The silence that followed was thick, filled with the weight of the decisions we both knew we would have to make. There were no easy answers, no quick fixes. We were standing at a crossroads, and the path we chose from here would shape the rest of our lives. The days that followed our conversation were filled with an uncomfortable quiet. It wasn't that we didn't speak to each other, far from it, but the atmosphere between us had changed. What had once been simple, light-hearted conversations now felt laden with unspoken meaning. There was a heaviness in the air, an awareness of what had shifted, but we both seemed unsure of how to navigate it. In the mornings, I would catch myself glancing at Mark as he sat across from me, his eyes focused on his coffee or the morning paper. He would occasionally look up, meeting my gaze, and in those fleeting moments, I felt the electricity between us. It wasn't overt, it was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, always there, like an invisible thread that connected us in ways neither of us had anticipated. The weight of it was both exhilarating and frightening, and I found myself struggling to maintain the composure I had so carefully built over the years. I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation, the honesty we had shared, the way Mark had laid bare his feelings, his confusion, and his vulnerability. It had been so unexpected, yet it made sense in a way that I didn't want to admit. I had felt it, too, that pull, that strange connection between us. But I had dismissed it for so long, buried it under layers of duty and commitment, not wanting to confront the possibility that it might be something real. It wasn't just about attraction, it was about something deeper, something that spoke to the heart of who we were as individuals, as people with desires, needs, and complexities that had been hidden beneath the surface for far too long. I had spent so many years being the perfect wife, the perfect friend, the perfect caregiver, that I had forgotten what it meant to be myself, to be vulnerable, to acknowledge my own wants and desires. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I found myself caught between two conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was guilt, the overwhelming sense that I was betraying Andrew, that I was crossing a line that should never have been crossed. But on the other hand, there was something else, something that felt like awakening, a sense of clarity that came from embracing the truth, no matter how painful or difficult it was. I knew I had to talk to Mark again. We couldn't leave things unsaid, couldn't continue pretending that nothing had changed. But the idea of confronting it again made me nervous. What if things didn't go the way I hoped? What if acknowledging these feelings made everything more complicated than it already was? It was another evening, just like the others, with Andrew away for work. Mark was sitting across from me, his usual quiet self, but tonight there was a tension between us that neither of us could ignore. He was trying to be casual, trying to act like everything was normal, but I could tell he was just as conflicted as I was. He wasn't the carefree man he had once been in our company, there was something more subdued in him now, something that reflected the weight of what we had shared. After a long stretch of silence, Mark finally looked up from his coffee and met my eyes. "Claire, we need to talk," he said, his voice a little shaky, but still steady. I nodded, my heart racing. I had known this moment would come. It was inevitable. We can't keep doing this, pretending like nothing happened, he continued. I can't keep pretending like everything is fine between us. The truth is, I care about you. I don't know what to do with these feelings, but I can't just ignore them. I felt a surge of emotion rise within me, relief, confusion, guilt, all of it tangled together. Here it was, the truth we had both been avoiding. But in some way, it was freeing. We were finally being honest, finally acknowledging the complexity of what had been brewing beneath the surface for so long. I know, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I've felt it, too. I don't know what this means, or what to do about it, but I can't ignore it anymore. It's like we've both been living in this space where nothing has changed, but everything has changed. Mark's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, I saw a flicker of relief in them. He didn't say anything for a moment, just sat there, letting the words sink in. We were both in uncharted territory, unsure of what the future held but unable to turn back from this newfound understanding between us. I'm scared, he admitted, his voice quiet. Scared of what this means. Scared of hurting people we care about. But I can't keep pretending that I don't feel something for you. That it's not there. I understood. I had been scared, too, scared of the consequences, scared of what would happen if we let these feelings grow. But now, in this moment, I realized that the fear of what might happen was holding me back from something that was already real. The emotional connection we had wasn't just a fleeting moment, it had been building for a long time, and now it had reached a point where we could no longer ignore it. We're both scared, I said softly, my heart in my throat. But we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with each other. If we're going to figure this out, we have to stop pretending that nothing is happening. Mark nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling in. So what happens now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know what the future would bring or where this path would take us. But one thing was clear, we had crossed a line, and now we had to figure out what to do with it. There was no going back, no pretending that we didn't feel what we felt. We take it one step at a time, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was still racing. We can't control everything, but we can control how we handle this. And we have to handle it with honesty, with care. We need to figure out where this goes, but we can't rush it. For the first time in what felt like forever, the tension between us seemed to ease. It wasn't resolved, not by any means, but we had taken the first step toward acknowledging the complexity of our feelings. The future was still uncertain, filled with questions and fears, but we were no longer hiding from it. We were facing it together, and that was the first step toward understanding what came next. As the evening wore on, we continued to talk, not about the future, but about the present, about the feelings we had, about the relationship we had built, about the people we were becoming. It wasn't an easy conversation, and it wasn't the end of our journey. But it was a beginning. And for the first time, I felt as though we were both moving forward, together, rather than hiding from the truth. In this story, Claire finds herself in the midst of an emotional conflict that forces her to confront truths about herself, her relationships, and the boundaries she thought she understood. What started as a simple, steady friendship between Claire and Mark, Andrew's longtime friend, gradually transforms into something much more complex and difficult to ignore. Their emotions evolve unexpectedly, leading them both to a point where they cannot deny the connection they share, and they are faced with the challenge of understanding and navigating these feelings. Throughout the story, we see Claire struggling with guilt, confusion, and self-doubt. She has spent years being the perfect wife, trying to fulfill her role as a stable partner to Andrew while maintaining a respectful friendship with Mark. However, as the emotional bond between her and Mark deepens, Claire is forced to question her identity, her commitments, and the path she has chosen. Mark, too, is conflicted. He is aware of the potential consequences of their feelings but cannot ignore the authenticity of his emotions for Claire. As the story unfolds, Claire and Mark both come to the realization that the emotional truth they've been avoiding can no longer be suppressed. They acknowledge the complexity of their emotions, but they are also painfully aware of the challenges and consequences these feelings could have on their lives. In the end, both characters must face the reality of their desires, their fears, and the relationships they hold dear. The story, at its core, is about emotional honesty and the difficult journey of self-discovery. It reflects how personal desires can sometimes conflict with societal expectations and responsibilities. Claire and Mark are forced to question their values and make difficult decisions about how to move forward with the awareness that their actions have consequences beyond themselves. Ultimately, the story encourages the importance of introspection, understanding one's own feelings, and recognizing the need for transparency in relationships. The primary lesson we can take from Claire and Mark's story is the importance of emotional honesty. It's easy to ignore our feelings, to suppress them, or to convince ourselves that everything is fine when, deep down, we know it isn't. However, denying or hiding our emotions can lead to inner turmoil and make us more likely to hurt the people around us. Like Claire, we must confront uncomfortable truths about our emotions, desires, and relationships, even when it feels difficult or risky. This story also teaches us the significance of understanding our boundaries and being honest with others about how we feel. Relationships, whether romantic, familial, or friendships, are complex, and it's essential to recognize when our emotions are evolving in ways that may challenge these dynamics. Instead of ignoring or running away from these feelings, we must face them head-on, communicate openly, and make decisions that align with our values. Applying this lesson to our lives means being true to ourselves and others. It means acknowledging when something feels off and being willing to make the necessary changes to live authentically, even if it's uncomfortable. It's about finding balance, navigating our relationships with integrity while being honest about our emotional needs and respecting the boundaries of others. If you found this story thought-provoking and insightful, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue creating meaningful content that explores the complexities of human emotions, relationships, and personal growth. By subscribing, you not only show your support but also join a community that values deep reflections and meaningful discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey, and we look forward to bringing you more engaging and thought-provoking stories in the future. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. Your feedback is invaluable in helping us grow and create more content that resonates with you. Stay tuned for the next video, and we'll see you there.